When you're connecting a monitor to your laptop or to your desktop computer, what kind of cables do you use? For the most part, people have standardized on HDMI. Most people know what an HDMI cord is. In fact, a lot of computers came with an HDMI port. Some that were older might have a micro HDMI or a mini HDMI port, but for the most part, if you have HDMI or you have a TV, you know what HDMI looks like. A little bit like a trapezoid, and most modern monitors will have an HDMI port on them. Another interface you might have come across or seen is a display port. It looks a little bit like an HDMI, but it's only squashed on one side. The other side is square. DisplayPort is not HDMI, and it's not going to fit in an HDMI port. Please don't try to put a cord into a port that it won't fit into. That's going to break a lot of things, and it's just not going to work. Older or legacy cords like VGA or DVI. A VGA cord or port will typically be blue, and it's this one that has all these little dots in it. This is VGA. DVI is typically white, so the cords might have a white tip, and it's also going to have pins inside of it, but it has some pins, and then there's usually like a little flat piece at the end. DVI actually had two different standards, DVI-D, which carried a digital interface, and then DVI-I. For the most part, modern devices, so things that have been built in the last 10 years, aren't going to have multiple different DVI ports. There's just going to be one DVI port, and pretty much every DVI cable you can find is going to fit it, unless you have one of those really old ones. Thankfully, most things now are standardizing on a USB-C. If you have a phone, you're probably used to this port because a lot of phones now do charge with the USB port. Apple's Thunderbolt proprietary technology is now in a USB-C like port, so you can use a USB-C cable on an Apple Thunderbolt port. Most laptops are going to have a combination of cables, but they will come with a USB-C port, which is a mini display port. When we talked about the DisplayPort cable, the one that looked like an HDMI cable but was flat on one side, these USB-C cables can also carry the same signal most of the time from most modern devices. But it's important that you don't use just any USB-C cord. One of the great things about standardizing on a standard like USB-C, most people are going to have these cords and you don't have to go out and buy a special dongle or a new special cord. One of the bad things, there's going to be a lot of cords like this that just aren't going to be able to carry the signal that you want or the speed that you want. Unfortunately, it's very hard to figure out which cables can and can't carry the signal without reading the reviews. So you might want to read the reviews if you're looking for something to do a specific job and search to see if someone mentioned it working or not working. So you have to make sure that you're getting a cable that is capable of carrying the display or the fast charging, whatever you need. Even HDMI cords are not all made the same. You can get an HDMI cable and it might not carry as good of signal as some other HDMI cables. Now you know some of what display interfaces are out there, where to find them, and what to call them. So when you tell that IT guy in your life, I need a new cable to go from my computer to my monitor, and they say, what kind of ports do you have available? Hopefully now you're able to say a little more than the one that looks like a smiley face.